There was a time in Judah when the house of God had been neglected. The temple in Jerusalem, once a place of reverence, worship, sacrifice, and prayer, had fallen into disrepair. Under the influence of Athaliah, what was sacred had been mistreated. What should have been honored had been neglected. The very place that represented God's presence among his people was no longer being cared for as it should have been. But God was not finished. He raised up a young king named Joash, and under the guidance of Jehoiada, the priest, Joash saw what others had learned to live with. He looked at the broken condition of the temple and understood that this could not continue. The house of the Lord mattered. The worship of God mattered. The honor of God mattered. So Joash set his heart on restoration. This was not merely about fixing a building, it was about renewing something holy. It was about restoring a place where God's people could meet with him. It was about making sure that the visible condition of God's house reflected the reverence that belonged to his name. And that is how renewal often begins. Someone sees what has been neglected and refuses to accept it as normal. Someone cares enough to say, "This matters, this must be restored." Joash had that kind of heart, but he was not alone. Jehoiada stood beside him with godly wisdom and spiritual leadership. Together, they directed the people's attention back to the temple, back to worship, back to what had been allowed to slip away. Faithful leadership helped awaken a faithful response. What happened next is one of the most beautiful parts of the story. Joash did not leave the burden on only a few shoulders. He did not make temple repair the task of priests alone. He did not assume that a small group would somehow carry the whole weight. Instead, a chest was placed at the gate of the temple, and the people were invited to bring their offerings for the repair of the house of God. That invitation changed everything. Because now the restoration of the temple was no longer just a leader's concern, it became the work of the whole community. Every person had the chance to participate. Every person had the opportunity to say, "I may not be able to do everything, but I can do something. I can be part of rebuilding what belongs to God." That spirit is still needed today. A church becomes strong when people stop assuming that the work will always be done by somebody else. A church becomes beautiful when members stop standing at a distance and begin stepping forward with willing hearts. The moment people begin to say, "This is my church too. This is my mission too. This is my opportunity too," everything changes. And the people in Joash's day did respond. They gave willingly. They brought their offerings with readiness of heart. This was not just duty. It was devotion. It was not empty pressure. It was willing participation in something sacred. Their giving became an act of worship. There is something deeply moving about that. When people give joyfully, whether through money, time, labor, skill, service, or simple availability, they are saying something powerful without words. They are saying, "I care about the house of God. I care about the work of God. I care about what happens here. I believe this is worth my part." That kind of giving does more than meet a need. It reveals love. It reveals unity. It reveals faith. And just as important, the gifts that were brought were handled faithfully. The funds were carefully directed toward the purpose for which they were given. They were used for the actual repair of the temple. They were placed into the hands of workers who did the job with honesty and care. That matters because faithful stewardship honors both God and the people. When resources are managed with integrity, trust grows, confidence grows, unity grows. People are strengthened when they know that what they give is not wasted, not mishandled, but used responsibly for the mission and the needs before them. So the giving was real, the stewardship was faithful, and the work moved forward. Skilled workers were brought in, carpenters, masons, builders, and craftsmen. Their hands became part of holy work. Their trade became service to God. Their labor became part of the story of restoration. This is a beautiful reminder that the work of God is not only done in visible spiritual roles, it is also done through practical service, through building, through repairing, through cleaning, through organizing, through fixing, through showing up, through doing what needs to be done with a willing spirit. In God's work, practical service is sacred service. And when the temple was restored, it was not simply so that the building would look better. It was so that worship could continue. It was so that God's people could gather in a place that was cared for, honored, and ready for the sacred purpose it had been given. The building mattered because worship mattered. The repairs mattered because what happened inside that house mattered. And beneath all of it was something even deeper. The restoration of the temple pointed to the need for spiritual renewal as well. This was not just about wood, stone, and metal. It was about hearts returning to God. It was about the people remembering what was holy. It was about restoring reverence, devotion, and shared responsibility for the things of the Lord. That is why this story still speaks so clearly today. Because in the end, the temple was rebuilt through shared responsibility. A king led, a priest guided, the people gave, the workers built. No one person carried the whole burden, everyone had a part. And because everyone had a part, the house of God was restored. That may be one of the most important lessons for any church family. God never intended for his work to rest forever on the same few hands, the same few givers, the same few volunteers, the same few faithful people who quietly keep everything going while others assume it will somehow get done. Thank God for those faithful people. They are a blessing. But the beauty of God's design is that his house is strongest when his people rise together. This story calls us to that same spirit, to be a people who do not just admire the mission, but carry it. To be a people who do not just notice the need, but answer it. To be a people who do not just hope others will step forward, but become the ones who step forward. Because when people participate, burdens become lighter. When people give willingly, ministry becomes stronger. When gifts are handled faithfully, trust becomes deeper. When skilled hands and willing hearts unite, restoration happens. So the story of Joash is not only about a temple long ago, it is also about us. It is about what kind of church we will be. It is about whether we will watch from the sidelines or join the work. It is about whether we will assume the burden belongs to a few or understand that the blessing belongs to all. May we be the kind of church family that responds with willing hearts. May we give joyfully. May we serve faithfully. May we carry the work together. And may the house of God be strengthened not by the sacrifice of only a few, but by the united love of many. Many hands, one mission, one church, one God worthy of our very best.